So today joining us, we have Jess Peters with Spruce Row Farm. Jess is a dairy farmer from Northwest PA, where she and her family own and operate a registered herd of Jersey cows. And if you've seen her on Instagram, she will tell you that Jersey cows are the best cows ever. So no matter what anyone thinks. Farming's always been a passion of Jess's, and she's had lots of other experiences and opportunities. After she graduated from Penn State, she spent 2 years working and managing farms in New Zealand, which I would love to hear about that sometime. That had to have been an awesome experience. And now she's been home for over 10 years, and she's become an online advocate for agriculture and mental health within the ag community. So past webinars and recordings that we've done in this series, we've had financial stress on the farm, dealing with stress on the farm. And last fall, we did a couple others with effective communication and communication challenges on the farm. And then our workshop, we recorded our presentations there too, and that included challenges for women farmers and many more. They can all be found on our website at pafarmlink.org/webinars. And we talked a little bit, I mentioned mental health in agriculture. Just wanted to bring up the new agri-stress helpline that Pennsylvania has. It was launched here back in May, I believe it was, and it's specifically ag related. So if you or someone you know is having some mental health issues, troubles, just needs to talk to someone, feel free to reach out, call this agri-stress helpline. The folks on the other end are professionals who are also familiar with agriculture, and they have experience with agriculture. That's one of the many things that holds some people back from getting help, is because many mental health professionals do not understand agriculture, and it's not their fault. It's just, not something that they were trained in. They were trained in, other areas. So this one is great that the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture has launched this, and it has ag experienced professionals on the other end. You can call for someone else if there's someone that needs help and you just don't know what to say to them, don't know how to talk to them. You can call on behalf of that person and try to find out what you can do to help them as well. Our funding recognition, we are grateful for all of the funding that we receive from the USDA. And if you have any questions, here is our contact information. We're grateful that you have joined us. I am going to stop sharing my screen now so that Jess can share whatever she might have. And I am going to turn it over to you, Jess.
So my name is Jess. As Michelle said, you got a little bit of my background. And I want to start this off. I start all of these off by saying I am not a professional at this. I'm not sure I'd call myself a professional at anything, really. I'm not a consultant. I'm not certified in any kind of mental health work. I'm just a person who lives with it and then talks about it a lot, specifically online on Instagram, mostly. And I think that's a lot of why I'm here. A lot of what I talk about is specific to agriculture, but the feelings and the thoughts behind them necessarily aren't. And one thing, I was really excited to be asked to speak about this, actually, because I truly believe this is one of the things we don't talk enough about in agriculture. And we talk about all kinds of stress, the financial stress specifically, the weather, the things we can't control, the public perception, environmental regulations coming down the line, but we don't talk a lot about how hard it is to work with our family. I think there's two big reasons for that. One is we don't want it to get back to our family. Like, I think it's one of those things within your family that we all feel it and think it, but you don't want to say it out loud because you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But then also the other thing I think that sometimes holds me back from it is the public perception of agriculture. We're perceived as a very traditional group, right? Like, we work all day with our family. We love it. We come home, we sit at the table, have a meal, drink our glass of milk, go to bed at 7 because we're up at 4. And I don't think that's really fair. I think it kind of puts the pressure on us because in the same breath, the people who think that's how we operate will say that if they had to work with their family every day, they would die. And we're very much the same, I mean, it's not easy to work with your family. And the way I'm going to go through this, I'm going to talk a little bit about myself and my family. And then the structure of this is going to be a little bit about my family, some of the struggles that I specifically have dealt with, or that I know working with your family brings, some of the possible solutions that I've seen or come up with. And then I have my favorite story of all time, I call the wrench story, to end with, which legitimately changed my life as far as working with my family and working with anyone, really. So we'll start with about me a little bit. I am a farm kid to the core. I'm living and working on the farm that I grew up on with my family. My brother and I are fifth generation. It hasn't been father to son passing. My dad actually inherited it from his cousin, but the family has been here for around 200 years. I went to college to Penn State with a degree in animal sciences. Then I moved to New Zealand for 2 years, not consecutively. I'd gone with the Dairy Science Club on a trip to New Zealand, our big spring trip, and decided I wanted to go there for a year after college. I wasn't ready to come home. So I went there for a year. That's the picture on the top left. It's gorgeous there, by the way, absolutely gorgeous. I would love to talk about it to anyone, another presentation, another time. But, and then I came home for a year and still wasn't ready to be here. So much to my dad's dismay, I went back for about 10 months, but I've been home now for about 11 years. I am also an advocate. I don't love that word, but it best describes, I guess, what I do. I started that 7 years ago, maybe 8. And it mostly started out talking about the farm, trying to reach consumers and tell them what we do and sharing my farm life. Over the last couple of years, it's kind of transitioned into more talking about mental health, specifically to do with agriculture. But like I said, a lot of the feelings and the emotions to that are the same. I talk about agricultural issues, but kind of the feelings of it kind of translate in all aspects of life. I'm also an author. I always put this in there because I often forget to talk about it. I've written 2 children's books, actually. They're on the right. The first one is called Farm Nursery Songs. This one up here, it's about, I've rewritten some children's songs to be about the farm. So like to the tune of Baba Black Sheep or Itsy Bitsy Spider. The bottom one's called The Confused Cow. It's about a cow who takes a walk at night and falls asleep. Excuse me, my allergies are raging today. So if I cough or yawn, it's not because I'm bored. It's my asthma being fun. Anyway, The Confused Cow, she falls asleep, goes for a walk at night, falls asleep and wakes up in a city. And kind of throughout the course of the book of her finding her way back to the farm, you learn about what cows eat and where they sleep and what they do. And it's kind of a way, kind of my way, I guess, to push my advocacy a little bit further. It's amazing the perception that even adults get from children's books about farming. So what I really pushed for in both those books is, in the nursery farming book, there's actual pictures of our farm. And in The Confused Cow, it's all illustrated, but it's illustrated in a more modern agricultural way. It's not like a little red barn on a little hill with a little man in overalls with straw in his mouth, which is fine if that's what farming is to you. But my goal was to kind of give a more modern push to or view of agriculture. So that's a little bit about me if you don't know me. I also love gummy bears and chocolate milk. I prefer to drink my chocolate milk with a straw with an umbrella. I used to have one here, but I don't right now. And since we're talking about family, I figured I'd talk a little bit about mine, about the Peters family. On the top left, everyone but me is in that picture. Originally, there are 5 of us. My parents, Jeff and Janet, my brother Slade's on the right, my brother Cole's on the left. And that's my nephew, Cannon, is Slade's son, the little guy there. We grew up here on the farm. It was always Cole preferred the tractors. I preferred the cows. Slade kind of preferred all of it and none of it at the same time. Do you know what I mean? I think of the 3 of us, it was always most obvious that he would be the least likely to come back to the farm. Not that he couldn't or he wouldn't. I'm so confident now that if something happened, he would come back. I think it would be probably a bad decision for all of us in the end, but I know he would do anything to help us. He actually works for NASA. That's him in the bottom left-hand corner. He recently received an award, actually, it's pretty cool, called the Silver Snoopy Award. For less than 1% of NASA employees receive it. And the cool thing is the pin that he received was actually flown into space by the astronaut that presented him the award. But that's his wife, Candy, and son, Cannon, in the bottom left. And on the right there is my brother and his wife, Michelle, and their recently adopted daughter, Aviana. She was adopted in March, and they're also adopting twin 9-month-old boys, hopefully in the next 2 months. So life is crazy. And I'm fairly lucky with my in-laws. It didn't start out that way. Well, they're in-laws. My sister, Michelle, Michelle worked here for a while, and she and I clashed quite a bit. I'll talk about that later. But luckily Candy has never really had anything to do with the farm. She loves Pennsylvania, but not the farm. I mean, she doesn't dislike the farm, but it was never a question of her being part of the farm. And the fact that Slade finally relinquished his, every year there was a, I might come back to the farm kind of vibe, and he's finally relinquished that, and it has made a better relationship for all of us. The farm, we have a Jersey dairy farm in Northwest Pennsylvania. We milk around 270 cows. We have just under 500 total. Do all of our own cropping. We get a little help with harvesting corn silage in the fall, but it keeps us pretty busy. It's always been mostly us. We're recently hiring someone. We actually hired someone new this week. His first day was yesterday. So if you know about hiring new people on a farm, our fingers are crossed, let's say. He showed up today, so that's a good sign. We'll see how the rest of the week goes, because people showing up consistently has been a problem. The struggles working with family. I mean, I think if you're here, you probably work with your family, and especially in Pennsylvania, I think that's a big, well, I mean, 97% of all farms are family farms, so everybody struggles with this. The relationship thing, I think these are the three biggest struggles to me personally, and how I feel about it. The relationships for me, and again, I have to only speak to my experience. The parent-child relationship is really hard. And when I hear of a young farmer going back to their family farm, I seek them out, and I want them to know that this is going to be hard. You're going to feel completely inadequate. You know, there's a difference between working for your parents as you're growing up and coming back to the farm and working with them. And it stirs up all kinds of emotions and all kinds of issues. And it's hard. You know, I specifically tell people, you're going to cry a lot for that first year. Maybe not that long. You know, you're going to cry when you go to sleep. Maybe I like to cry in the bathroom, you know, specifically when I'm showering. There's just a whole lot of different emotions coming in, because you're trying to come in and take over part of the farm, and maybe your parents, you know, parents don't want to give it up. You know, they've been doing it for years, and maybe it's a power thing that they don't want to give up any of that power, or maybe it's just they don't want you to make the mistakes they made and hurt the business they've built, but they eventually have to realize you've got to make those mistakes. You know, you've got to come into the business the way they have and have your own dreams. And I know that the parent-kid aspect is really hard. Another part of the equation there, I think, is sibling. If you're coming in with a sibling, it's just a fact that I'm not saying parents have favorites. I'm not saying that, but personalities clash. And when you start working with your parents, you kind of determine which parent it's easier for you to work with. And I know sometimes that can create, I think, closer relationships between certain kids and their parents. And it can feel a lot like favoritism to the kid who's left out. And that's it's not easy. Nobody wants to think they're not the parent's favorite. But it's also hard to remember that, I know for me specifically, I think as the kid coming in, it's hard to remember that your parents are people too. You know, they've treated you like a parent for your whole life. And now all of a sudden, it's not a parent-child relationship as much as a partnership between two people. And I think it's really hard to separate those two things out. And you're also, it's difficult with family because you're trying not to hurt each other's feelings. But I think we're also super sensitive to family relationships, more sensitive to our family than we are to other people. We take it more personally. For example, I will say things to Cole, my brother, that I will not say to other people. It's not right, but it's true. Then there are the emotions. I think I kind of touched on that when it comes to relationships. We're just, like I said, we're just more sensitive, I think, to our family. I will simultaneously take things more personally than my family says to me, and also show them my worst, which I'm not entirely sure makes sense. But I think there's just this thought in your head that they will love me no matter what. So I can show them how awful I can be, completely awful to them. and not expect the same response that I would to, say, an employee or someone else I work with. And then the hardest thing is communication. And I don't think anyone will ever, you can go through all the communication workshops and use all of the tips, and communication will still fall apart between families. I don't know what it is. My brother and I tend to have an unspoken thing. We can go through an entire milking not speaking to each other, just pointing and grunting, and it works. And then 12 hours later, the next milking we do together, nothing works because we refuse to talk to each other for whatever reason. I think working with family when it comes to communication is simultaneously sometimes easier and harder. Sometimes they just get you. You have this kind of unspoken language that you understand because you've been through the same experiences. But at the same time, like I said, I won't explain things properly sometimes to my family because I think they should get me, if that makes sense. I think they should understand what I mean, and I don't want to have to explain it. And then communication falls apart. And I know on our farm, we have issues with, I might tell my mother and my brother something and forget to tell my dad. And then my dad's kind of left in the dark and things fall apart because he didn't know, or you assume your family will tell the others, and that doesn't always happen, which makes communication just awful. It always amazes me how something can fall apart so quickly that could have been solved by a simple text. All the ways we have to communicate to each other, and we just, for whatever reason, don't do it. And I posted something on Instagram yesterday about working with family, and I talked to quite a few people about their issues and some problems they've had on their farm. And one woman said this, and it just struck so true. Working together is not easy, but it's the only job where I can say, bite me, I'm going to the house, and not get fired. And how true is that? If you were working for someone and said that, you'd either be fired or in a crap ton of trouble. But when you're working with your family, you can have those moments, those fall apart moments, and come back and make it work somehow. Our families know us better than anyone. Sometimes they forgive us more than others would, which I'm not sure is a good thing all the time, at least in my case. Some of the solutions that, all right, I'm not going to lie to you and say that we've worked these through. There are things we've talked about that we should do, but they haven't always come to fruition. One of the issues my brother and I also have is my dad, and I love my family. You should know that right from the start. Everything I say, I love my family. I would take a bullet for any of them. But my dad, a lot of times, will work through plans in his head and then just tell us what to do. And I think there's two parts to that problem. One, some of that is when you're the kid, you're used to just being told what to do your whole life and doing it. Like when we were growing up, we didn't come up with the plan, we just executed it. So it's easy to keep following that pattern. And then it's also hard for my dad to not be the one who comes up with the plan. It's kind of a twofold problem. So occasionally he'll come up with a plan, and we're, dairy farm, especially planting or harvesting season, you're trying to plant 300 acres of corn or like 500 acres of corn at the same time you're trying to, put heifers out on pasture and check fences and vaccinate and deworm the whole herd and haul the manure pit for spring. And Dad will come up with a plan in his head, and Cole and I will think up something on and be like, no, that's absolutely ridiculous. We're not going to get everything done if we do it that way. If we come to him with the united front, Cole and I will talk about it first, and we both come to him with our opinions. That tends to go a lot better than us just either one, brooding on it and never saying anything, or two, ambushing it in from all sides. And the other part of that is doing our homework. If we have ideas or changes we think we want to make, we'll come to him and either have consulted with, other industry professionals or veterinarians specifically. She's worked with us for over 20 years, or we come with, I talk to other farmers or articles we've seen and written. A lot of times he's more receptive to our ideas. And again, I'm coming at this from the kid side because that's all I know, honestly. One thing my brother and I are really good at is finding the fun in our day. And I every presentation I talk about mental health, I talk about finding the fun in it. And I think, excuse me, there's nothing more important than finding the fun when working with your family. I think we've all seen examples, whether we are one or we've just witnessed it, of families completely falling apart when they become partners in the farm. And that honestly, it breaks my heart. One of the scariest things about, at this point in the dairy industry, the thought of having to sell your cows is in the back of everyone's mind. I think it's just, unfortunately, where the industry is at. And the thing that scares me the most about possibly having to sell our farm is not getting to see my family every day. As much as some days I hate working with them, that is a really scary thought to me, because we work really hard, and sometimes not hard enough, to find the silly and the fun in our day. The pictures on the right just happen when my brother and I work together, and my dad brings the serious. And one of my favorite stories involved my dad, brother, and I. Cole was trying to play a prank on me, and we have 4 hoses that hang in the parlor, and they hang from the nozzle. And we were just, Cole and I had been milking, and my dad came in to talk to us, and he's kind of just milling around while we're working. Well, we use bag balm when cows get scabs on their teats to help soften those scabs. Cole had covered one of those hose nozzles in bag balm, like an amount of bag balm that you wouldn't have even used on a cow. An excessive amount of bag balm. And it was one of the hoses at my end of the parlor. So he was thinking, he covered it in bag balm. I would pick the hose up, and the nozzle just kind of falls into your hand. So I wouldn't even know it was coming. And all of a sudden, bag balm over my hand. He didn't account for the fact that my dad was going to be coming in. So my dad picked it up first. And Cole started laughing, thinking that was the end of the prank, until my dad turned to me and said, after you bag balm these cows, you really should wipe your hands off. I looked at Cole, immediately knew what had happened, and started yelling, and Cole's laughing and my dad's confused. So not only did he get to bag balm somebody's hand, he didn't even get blamed for it. Stupid, silly little things like that, I think, are what has made our family working together work, to be honest. And the be uncomfortable thing, I don't know if this is just me, and I hope it's not, because if it is, you're all going to think I'm a monster. For some reason, to me, working with me, I'm not a great manager because I'm very uncomfortable giving praise. And I know that sounds awful, but to me, I'm also uncomfortable accepting it, if that helps. To me, if you're doing your job correctly, in my head, it's like, well, that's your job, if you don't hear me criticizing or correcting, you're doing a good job. And that's 100% how I'm raised. My dad is very much like that too. I've had to learn to be uncomfortable and say thank you and say you're doing a good job. And I think especially to our other family members, I don't know why that's so hard to do, but it is. It's kind of hard to acknowledge the good. Or when you text me, I am not a person who just if the response only needs to be an okay, I'm not a person who responds that. I just am not. In our group texts with my family, I'm often the person who doesn't react to a photo or something, just to have a reaction, until someone doesn't respond that to me. And then I wonder if they even got the text. So I've had to make myself, if my brother sends me a text saying, just to let you know, this was dropped off at the barn for you. Normally, I don't need to respond with an okay. I think he knows he sent the text. I'm sure he knows I saw it. It drives him nuts to not know if I've seen it or if the text went through. So I've uncomfortably had to make myself be that person that responds with the okay. And as I'm saying this out loud, it sounds even dumber than when I wrote it down on the paper. But that's true. It's how I am. And I've had to consciously be aware of that and fix it. Another tip that came from the post I made yesterday about working with family. Somebody said this, and I realized how true it is. Not everything needs to be verbalized. And my perfect example of this was that for a year or two, my sister-in-law worked here on the farm. She helped feed calves, and she and I were the main calf feeders. And we have a bottle of Flunix in the calf barn, basically ibuprofen. And it sits in the box, and we have a syringe in the box with it that goes with the Flunix. We don't change the syringe with every calf, but we change the needle on every calf. So the rule of thumb is after you give a shot out, you throw the old needle away, put the new needle on, and then put it back in the box. So every time you pick up that syringe to give a shot, there's a new needle on that syringe. I was over in the milking in the barn. She had a sick calf in the calf barn. She came over to tell me that she'd given it a shot. And at the end of the sentence, now remember, we were butting heads pretty regularly at this point. At the end of the sentence, she said, I gave so-and-so a shot and then put a new needle on the syringe and put it back in the box. I could have said two things there. I could have said, okay, thanks, and left it at that. Or I could have said, well, yeah, because that's how we do it. Guess which one I chose? Guess which one was the poorer option? So instead of saying, okay, smiling, swallowing my stupid sarcastic comment and moving on with my day, I said the sarcastic comment, and we stood there arguing for 15 minutes over how much of a jerk I was. I mean, that's not what I was arguing about, but in hindsight, almost 15 minutes after the conversation, I knew it was just me being a jerk. You don't have to say everything that pops into your head. And the story I'm going to tell you in a minute will prove that point even further, I hope. Another thing that I have found that we are surprisingly good at is to leave it at the farm. Now, for some people, we don't leave the farm. My farm is right here. My brother lives literally a 2-minute walk away. We're all right here all the time. But somehow we are surprisingly good at separating the farm from the personal, especially at least in the emotions and the way we interact. We could be screaming at each other in the barn and half an hour later come over for lunch and it's gone. Now, not all the time. There are entire weeks where I don't want to see my family, which is hard because I live with them. But then there are also times that we're all tired and angry and it's corn planting season and we're just ticked at each other all the time. And then that night we're all off milking and we'll just spontaneously go and grab ice cream together. Or, the other night we had an hour in the afternoon that my sister-in-law brought their 3 kids up and we all just played with the babies. It's not an easy thing to do. And again, the wrench story I'm about to tell you helped me get there. But if you can leave it at the farm somehow, find a way to separate the two in your mind, your relationships will be better for it. 100%. And now this part, I've reinforced it 7,000 times probably in the last, 20 minutes. How long have I been talking? Probably too long. I don't know how much longer I have. This story changed my life 100%. And I have told it dozens of times and I will tell it dozens of times more. And it came from a meeting my dad and I went to. It was, one of those, I think a farm credit meeting or something. Half of the reason you go is for 1, the food, and 2, to see people in real life. The meeting was about risk management, which I'm not saying isn't an important topic, but it's also kind of a dry topic. The guy was a decent speaker. It's just a topic that I was having a really hard time paying attention to. It was right after lunch. I'm a person who needs to fidget while I listen because I have to process. So I was sitting at the table, half listening, half taking my pen apart when he told this story. And after he told the story, I sat there for half an hour and stared at my napkin and realized how much this was me. And basically the story was that, we'll pretend it's me and my dad walking through our garage, which is our workshop, and there's a wrench on the floor. My dad walks past it and says, hey, pick up that wrench. I can choose to take that one of 2 ways. I can either think, seriously, he's asking me to pick up the wrench. What, does he think I think the wrench lives there? Like that's the spot the wrench is supposed to be in and I'm not going to pick it up because, hey, we leave the wrench right in the middle of the floor. Like I'm some kind of idiot. who wouldn't pick up the wrench? Is that what he thinks? Or I can think he just wants to make sure I'm picking up the wrench. One of those options is going to leave me brooding for an entire week because it's not a big enough thing for me to make a big deal of it right then. But it's enough of a thought that I would legit spend a week until at the end of that week, thinking about it, until at the end of that week, in my head, my dad thinks I'm a complete idiot, completely incompetent, can't do anything, and he hates me. Or I can pick up the wrench, move on with my life, and both of us will never think about it again. I spent so much time living in that first option. And I know there are legitimate family issues that tear families apart. I 100% understand that. But I also believe that a lot of giant family conflicts start with that stupid little thought, does he think I'm an idiot for not picking up the wrench? And in that scenario, one person is hurting and the other person has no idea. And all of a sudden, it's been years. And the way that person perceives, the way I would perceive my dad thought of me, every time he says something else, digs that hole deeper. And all of a sudden, it's morphed into this gigantic problem that no one can fix, and everyone's hurt from it. You can choose how you feel about that. You can choose how you feel about the things they say about you or to you specifically. When he told this story, originally I applied it to my problem with my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law is a person who will state the obvious. I'm not. So when she'd state the obvious to me, in my head, I was thinking, does she think I'm an idiot and don't see that? No, she doesn't think I'm an idiot and didn't see that. She just needs to say it. She needs to respond okay to every single text I send her. I don't. It took a long time. I can't even tell you how long. It probably took a full year for me to fully integrate this and stop making the stupid comments and stop taking the other comments seriously or personally. But once I did, it changed my life. It changed the way I see the people I work with, specifically my family, and it changed the way I interacted with them. It changed my life. I was a happier person. They were happier people. And I keep telling this story because I'm hoping it changes yours or someone's. I know there are people out there who are just that sensitive and take things personally, but when you're specifically living and working with your family, you can't take things so personally. We're all just people. We're all dealing with our own crap and our own thoughts, and we're all tired and exhausted, especially as farmers. And I think letting go of those silly little comments like, hey, pick up that wrench, can make all of our lives a lot easier. And honestly, at the end, people say this about marriages, and I think it's the same about all kinds of relationships. You make a choice to love your family every day. We made the choice to live and work with our families, and you have to make the choice to love them. And I think I know it can be more difficult than this, but for me, I know it's as simple as this. You either choose to love your family or you don't. And once you make that choice, you fight for it. If you need to be right, if I need to be right every day and need to have my opinion heard constantly, then fine, I make that choice and I fight for it. But after I heard that wrench story, I decided that I love my family more than that. My family is more important than my pride every single day. I mean, some days I do choose my pride and my opinion, and some days you have to choose that. But for the most part, I made my choice my family, and I fight for it. Maybe that's an oversimplification of the working with your family argument, but it's one that I think if you want a good relationship with your family, you have to make. So that is what I have. I don't know if that helped anyone or if it rang true for anyone else. But that's what I've learned. And I know when I first came home to the farm, I remember one family in particular in our county was having issues between the father and the son. And I think it had something to do with the son had a girlfriend the father didn't like, and he wouldn't leave the son the farm if he married the girlfriend, but the son loved the girlfriend. And it blew my mind how divided they were, because I grew up as family is family, and there's nothing more important than that. I couldn't understand why there was so much discord between the two. And some of that is my background. Our family's had some pretty big issues. I know my brother had open heart surgery when he was 15. My mom went through brain surgery and then uterine cancer back to back a few years ago. And that really brought our family together. But somehow I don't just love my family. I like them. I don't know where that happened. And I know I'm not sure we're in the majority in that, and that just makes me sad. But if you have any questions or any comments, anything you agree with or disagree with, please leave it. I guess there's some things in the chat.
Yeah, we do have a chat here. Do you ever refer farmers, family members to local mental health services? If so, how do you go about this? Approaching the people, helping them understand the need and that it's okay to reach out.
Yes. I mean, I don't, you guys can still see me, right? I think
yeah, I don't, your video stopped a while ago. I wasn't sure if you turned it off or.
No, I don't know what happened there. Let me see if I can find it again. There I am. I don't refer anyone as far as specifics. I do refer people, honestly, since COVID, I've referred a lot of people to like online therapy. I know betterhelp.com, and I know there are others. That's just the one that's easy to remember. Especially for farm families. I think I have friends who have used them, and I think it's just an easy way to get started because there's a certain, and I always mess this word up, anonymity about talking to someone online. You are still talking to a person, but I think if talking to someone on a screen, it makes you feel a little bit anonymous, and it makes people open up a little more.
Right.
So I have referred people a few that way. And like Michelle said earlier, I think our biggest issue in far as agriculture and mental health is the disconnect between mental health professionals understanding agriculture. And did I answer that question? I'm sorry, I got jumbled in my head. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. Yeah, I think that, online is definitely a good resource for farmers, especially because they're so proud. We've all at FarmLink, we've all been farmers or are farmers, and have dealt with farmers our whole life, and they don't want to admit that they need help with anything, not just mental health, whether it's help baling hay. They don't want to admit that they need help.
Yeah.
When my husband got sick, he didn't want to admit that he needed help. So
well, and one thing I think people don't really think about when it comes to finding a therapist is you're not going to click you might not click with the first person you find. It's really important to find someone you're comfortable with. And that might take you 5 different people. And what I've seen and what I've experienced is when you do that online, it's a lot easier to tell someone you don't click with them online than it is face-to-face.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So
right.
To use a site like BetterHelp or other internet sites they've got, it's easier to, go through those 5 therapists to find the one you like than it is to do that in person. You can also do it a lot more quickly.
Right. And I think with a farmer, that's a great option because taking the time, if the first one didn't work, the chances of them taking a time to make another appointment, to leave the farm to go to another one, probably, there's a good chance that's not going to happen. So, they can just find somebody else at night while they're sitting there, on a rainy day or after dinner or something like that. Yeah, I like that idea. I don't know why I hadn't thought of that before, but I really like that idea. And I wrote that betterhelp.com down, and I'll put that in our arsenal of resources.
It's such a leap for a lot of people in agriculture just to go get help.
Right.
That if it doesn't work with the first person they find, they think, oh, I failed at that, so I'm done. I think another thing that needs to be publicized more is that you need to find the right person. It's not just about finding a person, but if you really want to help yourself, you have to find the right person.
Right. Yeah, and Darlene, she mentioned here that it may take a while to find the correct therapist, and that financial stress also causes stress on families, and there's professionals that can help with those finances. And that's another area where a lot of farmers don't like to reach out, and they don't like to admit that they're having the financial troubles.
Yeah.
But I know there are a lot of resources out there, all through Penn State, through it's not Ag Choice anymore, through Farm Credit. There's a lot of resources out there that folks can help you, even find Farm Service Agency, that, they're all out there to help. And sometimes the farmers see them as, not necessarily the bad guy, but not being, just being more judgmental and they're not. They're there to help and they want to see everyone succeed. So yeah, getting those finances figured out is a big thing that can take the stress off of farm families. And I want to say, I love your statement, leave it on the farm. That's something that's very difficult for a lot of people to do, but it's very important also, especially when most of us live on the farm where we're having those battles and those conflicts and everything. When you go into the house, it's hard to leave it behind and not take it in with you. And I know
I was just going to say, I will say it's really hard to do, but it's worth working towards doing.
Definitely.
And it is work. Like we tend to think of work as just physical, but changing the way you think, and like that wrench story thing, to change my mindset in that way, it takes work.
Right.
Of constantly thinking, the first time after that story, when my dad told me to pick up the wrench, in my head, I was like, what, does he think I'm an idiot? And, for 20 minutes, I went down that path, and all of a sudden I was like, stop it. You're spiraling. This is your fault. Choose to not think this. Right.
And I like that, because I would have been on the same path as you. Like, what, do you think I don't know what I'm doing here? Or, I'd want to pick it up and whip it at them. But
and some of that might be being women in agriculture. We're used to being underestimated.
Yeah.
And preached to and told that we don't know what we're doing. And, and sometimes that's the case. Sometimes they're telling you don't know what you're doing. I've run up against that as well. But sometimes you just have to, and obviously there are exceptions to every rule, but you just have to not take it personally.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And I understand that, and have many stories as a woman in agriculture where I was, told I don't know what I'm talking about. And, when you both going for parts and, working in the field with other farmers who are male, and, it's not just men, but it's, predominantly they'll say, do you really know what you're doing? And, yes, please just get out of my way and let me show you.
Yeah. I think we all have stories.
Yeah. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of knowing your communication styles. You talked about the conflict with your sister-in-law, and that goes to show right there the two very different communication styles. And the packet of information that is sent out to our webinar participants has quizzes in there that they can use with their family members to determine what communication style they have and how to work with different communication styles.
Well, and I think knowing the communication style is one thing, and then understanding them is a complete another one.
Yeah, understanding that and how to deal with them. And like you say, that your dad and the older generation of farmer, they're stuck in their way. We find this with our succession planning work with families. They're stuck in their way. They have a certain way that they do things. They've always done it this way, which is the most dangerous statement that anybody can say in farming or any type of businesses. This is the way it's always been done.
Yeah.
They don't want to see change. They don't, especially technology. I mean, technology coming in. I see some of the older farmers just being blown away by technology and not wanting to learn it and not wanting to accept it. But it is the way of the future. And to be successful, it's going to have to be used on our farms. But yeah, we have a lot of the senior generation not wanting to say it's okay to change. So that's a big hurdle. And, back to the leave it on the farm, when we work with, what I tell families that I work with succession planning is, at the end of the day, when we get through all of this, I want to be able to see the family still sit down at dinner and have a nice holiday dinner together or whatever it may be. You know, I don't want them throwing rolls across the table at each other because they're ticked off at something someone said.
I've just always felt like, what's the point of working with your family if you can't still be a family at the end of the day?
Right, exactly.
And there are days we aren't family at the end of the day. You know, you can't, I'm not saying every day, but you know, if you work with your family and then can't enjoy Thanksgiving with them, what's the point of working with your family?
If you wanted to ask anything privately later on, feel free to email us at FarmLink, and we will get that question answered for you, or if there's any certain resources you are looking for. One resource I did want to mention is that in every county, if you have a mental health situation in your family that is coming to a head and there's someone that is either a danger to themselves or others, there are crisis units in every county that can be called to come in to avert that situation and kind of settle it down and do what's needed to get that person the help that they need. And we do have that information here at FarmLink if you need that. So again, Jess, just thank you very much for opening up and sharing about your family. If you're on Instagram, give her a follow. She's got great content on there, and I love watching her jerseys.
And if you have questions for me, on Instagram, I'm C Jess Farm, like C Spot Run. Feel free to, my messages are always open.
Well, again, thank you so much. We're going to let you go so you can get back to your day and let everyone else who's joined us. We thank you all for joining us, and thanks again.
Bye.